It's not good enough just to travel back in time. You need something to propel you in space as well.
The universe is fixed. This means that everything you find around you is fixed and never changes. But then it begs the question, how do we experience the flow of time and change within a universe that is static and unaltered? Does this mean that time moving forward and things happening around us aren't actually real? Is there an answer to a question that people have been wondering about for a long time? Does time really exist? In this video, we're going to take you on a journey through humanity's quest to find an answer to a really big question. We'll start with ancient people who measured time by the sun and the seasons, move on to thinkers who puzzled over ideas like yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and look at how different cultures view time. Then we'll dive into how modern scientists are searching for a theory that explains it all. By the end of this video, we might just get a bit closer to figuring out one of the biggest mysteries. Is time real? From the first men who walked the earth until the present day, mankind has been preoccupied with the concept of time. Ancient civilizations like the ancient Egyptians, the Romans, the Greeks, the Chinese, and other cultures have tried to define, measure, and tell the exact time at every point. This desire to have time within their grasp led man to develop various methods of telling time, ranging from the sundial to the atomic clock. But does the successful measurement of time mean that man understands this concept? Can you, by staring at your watch, understand why the past, the present, and the future exist? While man has been able to measure time accurately over the centuries, there are far more perplexing and complex aspects of the nature of time that have puzzled philosophers and great thinkers. So, the question is, does philosophy give us a better grasp of time? Does it answer the essential questions surrounding the reality of time? Or do great thinkers have the answer to the puzzle? As we journey through the vast expanse of time and space, exploring the mysteries of our universe, we often find ourselves seeking tools that can help us organize our thoughts, ideas, and discoveries. That's where Notion comes in. Imagine having a single platform that acts as your digital notebook, project manager, and database, all designed to help you bring order to the chaos of our endless curiosity. Whether you're a student delving into astrophysics, a teacher planning your next space-themed lesson, or just someone fascinated by the stars above, Notion can be your companion in this cosmic journey. With Notion, you can create custom layouts for your projects, take detailed notes complete with images and links, and even collaborate with fellow space enthusiasts all in one place. And the best part? Notion grows with you. As your projects and interests expand, Notion's flexible platform adapts, providing the perfect space for your ideas to take flight. From tracking the phases of the moon to organizing your favorite space documentaries, Notion helps you keep everything in one beautifully organized space. So, if you're ready to transform the way you explore and learn about our universe, click the link in the video description to try Notion today. As a member of the Notion affiliate program, your sign-up supports our channel and helps us bring more content like this to you. Let's get back to our timeless journey. The reality is that time is difficult to understand and far more difficult to explain. We classify it as one of the mysteries of life because of its unstable and elusive nature. On the one hand, time is omnipresent and in some ways omnipotent. So, we see it as this force that is with us, yet beyond our reach. On the other hand, while we can understand and experience it, we are stuck in a rut, trying to give a precise definition of what it is. Amid all this confusion about the true nature of time, the easiest way to think about time is as a universal form of change. This means that every change we experience in life is tied to time. So, for example, when a child develops into an adult, that child must have passed through time. When you move from point A to point B, you have changed your location. Thus, we can say you have passed through time. As a result, we can consider time as the world's common denominator, or better yet, the currency of reality. So, from experience, we have learned to divide time into the past, the present, and the future. But what do you think? Is the past, present, and future a continuum that is static and unchanging? This means that everything in this world is happening at once, and the difference is an illusion cooked up in our minds. Or is the past, present, and future three separate events happening in the universe at different times? Different philosophers have grappled with these questions, trying to discover the true nature of time. Plato is perhaps one of the first philosophers to consider the nature of time, and for him, time is a characteristic of an imperfect but dynamic world. So, the ellipticity of time shows us how incomplete and inferior the world is. However, Aristotle differed from Plato in his idea of time. To him, time is a measure of movement, and in his treatise known as Physics, he laid the foundation for how the world would come to understand time centuries later. Today, we think of the past as something that no longer exists, the future as something that does not yet exist, and the present as the now. This sounds like common sense today, right? Well, this idea of time came from Aristotle, and although, as we will see later in the video, modern understandings of physics have challenged this assumption, it is still a common view of time. By the Middle Ages, Augustine developed another concept of time, quite similar to Aristotle's, known as the concept of subjective time. And to Augustine, it is not a sign of imperfection like Plato thought, nor is it a measure of movement. Rather, it is a product of the mind. By Augustine's definition, time is not absolute. The past, the present, and future not absolutes, rather, they are subjective. So this means that your perception of the present, past, and future is different from that of every other person since it is subjective and personal. Although Augustine laid the foundation for the subjective view of time, it was expanded and popularized by Immanuel Kant. Kant explained time as something that doesn't just exist on its own. Rather, like Augustine, time is a feature of the mind. It all happens in the brain. Let's think of this concept of time like this. Your brain, or mind, is the instrument that allows you to interface with the world around you. And due to the vast nature of the world around you, your brain organizes things into different categories so that you can understand what you're seeing. One of these categories is time. Based on Kant's philosophy, time is not real, rather it is an empty form. However, there's a time-keeping mechanism in the brain that curates events and presents them to us within a specific timeline. So, without this mechanism in the brain, everything in the world happens at once, and we cannot make sense of it. For Kant, time is a creation of our mind, and everybody creates time in their unique way. Imagine that you are watching a basketball game, and the game is unfolding play after play, from the first quarter to the fourth quarter. However, suppose your best friend was also at the same game, but sat at a different stand in the arena. Will he experience the game the same way as you did? Kant believes you will experience the game differently because both of you will hear and see every play and every second of the game differently. While the early philosophers saw time as a static and constant part of the universe, Kant believes that what we call time is shaped by our thoughts and actions. So generally, what is the concept of time in philosophy? Does it exist? Is it a real part of the universe or an illusion of the mind? Most philosophers agree that time isn't some kind of universal force like gravity or electricity. It is not a standalone part of the universe. Rather, it is a tool we use to make sense of the world around us. In some other cases, philosophers believe that time is an illusion. It is like a mirage in the desert that appears to be real, but is not even there. These groups believe that everything in the universe is happening at once, which we experience in our unique ways. From the arguments of the different schools of philosophy, does time exist? Philosophy cannot find a unified answer to this question. So can we get satisfactory answers by observing cultures around the world? Is there something we can learn from how different cultures perceive time? The cultural perception of time around the world tells an interesting story. Each culture approaches time based on traditions, beliefs, and socio-economic status. So once again, we ask the question, is time fixed or an illusion of the mind? Let's examine the cultures to find an answer. If you live in the United States, then you may catch yourself throughout the day glancing at your watch to keep track of your appointments on a calendar. But does every culture view time in this way? Just as philosophers can't find common ground on the perception of time, cultures around the world have vastly different views on time. Western cultures perceive time differently from Eastern cultures. In the West, time is measured by the clock, so logically, every activity should have a precise beginning and an end. However, Eastern cultures have a different view of time. To them, time is event or personality-based. So, for example, in Eastern culture, they can prolong a meeting or schedule it for the next day if the participants need to attend to family-related matters. So rather than the precision of the West, each activity has a natural beginning and end. Apart from the East-West dichotomy in how we view time, we can group cultures around the world into three broad categories based on how they understand time. Some cultures are past-oriented. They draw most of their understanding from the past, stick to it, and make decisions based on it. So for someone in this kind of culture, the past is more real than the present and the future, so time is all about the past. On the other hand, some cultures live in the present. These cultures are commonly found in Latin America and Africa. They think about time in the present, so what happened in the past stays in there, and they also don't pay attention to the future. People in these cultures tend to see and experience time in the present. The third group is the future-oriented cultures. Logically, future-oriented cultures are those that live by the clock, so their perception of time is focused on the next event. They look forward and plan for the future, and they rarely look back at the past. In some of these cultures, like those in the United States, people enjoy the present, but look forward to the future. Now let's say we take one person from each of these cultures to the basketball game we talked about earlier. What would be their perception of time? Will they experience the game in the same way? Think about it for a minute. You have someone who is fixated on the past, another who is oriented towards the present, and then another who always anticipates the next thing. How will they describe that event if they end up with different views of one event? Can we say from observing different cultures that time is real? Or is it just another illusion that we perceive in vastly different ways? With the widely different cultural orientations towards time, one would largely rely on science to get a definitive answer to the question, does time exist, or is it yet another illusion? From Galileo to Newton until the 19th century, science viewed time as a constant part of the universe that was the same everywhere you go. This view was shattered when Einstein shocked the world with his theory of relativity. But does science give a clear answer to the question of the existence of time? Let us trace the evolution of this concept. Perhaps science will give us a satisfactory and conclusive answer. Newton's experience under an apple tree in 1665 did not just give us the laws of motion, but for the first time, the scientific world had a clear formulation of time. Linear time. The laws of motion did not just cover the movement of objects. At the same time, they defined time and gave it certain characteristics. For one, according to Newtonian laws, every observer of an event must agree on the sequence in which it happened. This argument believes that time is the same in every part of the universe. So, you can compare two events happening in different parts of the universe and determine whether they occurred simultaneously, before or after. By this argument, time gives order to all the events happening in the world, and time must be continuous so that we can define velocity and acceleration. Apart from being linear, Newtonian physics believed that time had a metric or a duration, and like the linear order of things, where everyone experienced an event in the same way, Newton believed that duration was also the same in every part of the universe. Let's say Steve and Eve are siblings, and they left school at 2 p.m. But rather than return home together, they went their separate ways. Steve went to hang out with his friends, while Eve went to the public library to do research for her sociology paper. According to Newton's proposition, if both siblings return home at exactly 6 p.m., the amount of time elapsed for Steve would be equal to the amount of time elapsed for Eve. So, basically, according to Newton, the world has a master clock, and this clock divides the world objectively into instants of time. He also believes that time flows, and this flow of time gives us what is called the arrow of time, an arrow that points us in the direction of the future. Newtonian physics summarizes features like order, continuity, duration, flow, and the arrow of time into the master clock, also known as time. This linear and rigid idea of time succeeded for 2 centuries, until the late 19th and early 20th centuries. This first disagreement came from an Austrian physicist, Ludwig Boltzmann. Boltzmann agreed with Newton's concept of the arrow of time. However, for Boltzmann, instead of a linear arrow that points in one direction, he believed that the arrow of time was asymmetric, meaning that it can point to both the future and the past. So rather than a linear time, he suggested a dynamic time where the difference between the past and the future was the arrangement of matter in the universe. This held up for some time until Einstein released his theory of relativity in 1915. The theory of relativity completely shattered any idea of an absolute time that governed everything in the universe. So Newton's idea of a master clock and universal spontaneity was thrown out the window. Einstein introduced a new concept of time, space-time. This means that events are happening in the universe at the same time for 2 people traveling at the same speed. So 2 of them might be in the same space but experience time differently. Let's say 2 people are observing the same event, but one person is traveling at 60 miles per hour while the other is traveling at the speed of light. According to Einstein, both observers would disagree on when the event happened, but they would agree on its space-time location. This means that the person traveling at the speed of light experiences time differently from the one traveling at 60 miles per hour. By 1915, Einstein took things further by proposing that space-time is a blanket that can be distorted by gravity. As a result, 2 people in different parts of the universe will experience the passage of time at different speeds. Let's say you synchronize 2 clocks, one in London and the other in New York. Einstein's relativity states that both clocks can't stay synchronized because the passage of time is affected by gravity. So with Newtonian physics, time was linear and simultaneous. But by the time Einstein was done, this idea of time was almost lost because he proposed fragments of time in place of one unified time, or the master time. Thus, the foundation on which the concept of time stood was already shaky. Physics looks at the universe in 2 ways. One is through the theory of relativity, which observes larger objects in the universe. The other is through the lens of quantum physics, which observes microscopic objects. The goal of modern physics has been to find one theory that unites general relativity and quantum mechanics. That is the theory of everything, that handles both the gravitational and the quantum aspects of matter. Scientists have launched several theories to achieve this, such as the superstring theory, causal triangulation theory, non-communicative geometry, and many others. However, none of these theories have conclusively described time in both aspects. But there is a possibility that when they arrive at the equation that describes everything, time will disappear. For years, physicists have rejected the possibility of a timeless universe. But as I said earlier, the foundations of time were shaken when Einstein released the theory of relativity. Recently, physicists have been working on the notion of relating physical events to one another rather than an abstract notion of global time. So, we can describe the movement of a satellite in terms of the ticks of a clock in your kitchen, or instead of describing the wrinkling of your face as you get older, with time, you can correlate it with a satellite's orbit. If this succeeds, time will cease to be a major part of the universe. Time would become redundant because we can describe change without it. This suggests that time is just an invented placeholder, a convenient frame of reference to describe things in the real world, not a definite part of the universe as Newton proposes. Since ancient times, man has grappled with the reality of time. Although humanity has created several ways to centrally measure it, all of them have proven to be unreliable. Also, when you consider it in the lens of philosophy, culture, and science, there is hardly any consensus on what it is, and there is no chance that we will get a satisfactory answer to the question, does time exist? So if there's no clear answer to this question, should we then consider time an illusion? Let's hear your thoughts in the comments section below. And while you are at it, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.